Hello and welcome to the first episode of I Review All My Steam Games in Order. No, there will not be a pithier title for this series. Even though I've made videos before, this first episode makes me feel a lot like the main character from the 16th century Chinese epic novel Journey to the West. Specifically during the part where he started his, journey to the West. At least that's where I assume he was going. I don't know, I didn't actually read the book. I totally just renamed the series Journey to Xenoclash 2, because that's the last game in my list, but then people would have no idea what the hell this is supposed to be about. Anyway, I digress. The first game in our journey through the backlogs is an adventure title by the name of 1954 Alcatraz. It was one of those games I got on GOG for like $1 when it was on sale. Of course, I didn't touch it after buying it, because that's the way of the Steam shopaholic. Now, I'm not used to playing adventure games, but this video series is all about treading into unfamiliar territory, so let's begin. 1954 Alcatraz's story is about as standard as it gets for a prison escape drama. It tells the tale of a man named Joe who was sent to the San Francisco prison island Alcatraz after escaping from another lower security prison which he was sent to for a crime he totally committed. Okay, I guess that's a pretty unique twist. Usually the characters in prison break dramas are innocent, but Joe here actually committed the crime, or at the very least he was a very integral part in the process of the crime being committed. Joe plans to escape from Alcatraz and enjoy a new life with his wife in Mexico, supported by the millions of dollars he stole from the bank with the help of the underground crime lord Mickey. While Joe is working his way towards his escape from Alcatraz, his beatnik wife Christine is communicating with him on the outside and making preparations for his escape and their exodus to Mexico. Unfortunately, Christine also has to deal with her unpaid rent and Joe's old accomplice Mickey trying to take the money from their heist back by force. The story is fine, if not a little boring. The thing I've learned most about video game stories is that the story itself doesn't really matter, but rather how it's told, and I think this game has a lot of promise. Once I entered into the main menu, I was really entranced by how responsive the button animations were when I hovered the mouse cursor over them. I could do this shit all day, especially if I was stoned. Since the game is relatively young, it works right off the bat. No need to download any system packs or mod managers just to run the damn game on a modern system. Not that I dislike doing that. The only issues I ran into were the game not automatically scaling to my monitor size and instead launching in 1280 by 720. And there are these switches that turn features on and off but don't tell you what each feature does. I mean, I know VSync is that thing you're supposed to turn off, but what the hell is 1954 mode? I don't want to play this game like it was designed in 1954. I don't have any spare punch cards lying around. Okay, all joking aside, 1954 mode is just a film grain black and white filter. We're not playing with that enabled. You can tell this is going to be a very stylized game the second you launch it. The very first cutscene is a series of still frames that give you the down low of what happened to land Joe in Alcatraz. How original, he committed a heist. The game starts and dear God, the character models really look like this? They really ripped the band-aid off here with this close-up. These character models look dated for a PS2 game, let alone a game made earlier this generation. I know a lot of stylized games have a timeless look to them, but I think this one aged poorly the second it hit the shelves. The proportions are just awkward and you can count the individual polygons on each character's face. If I were to play this on release 6 years ago, I'd still say it looks dated and awful. Now I know it's not entirely fair to compare these two games, but take Telltale's Walking Dead series for instance. Those games are also stylized and cel-shaded, but I can still say they look just like they did a decade ago when Season 1 was released. I got used to the character style though. I could forgive the game if it were like 15 years old and had this type of graphics, but I have Taco Bell leftovers in my fridge that are older than this game. To be fair, they look fine from a distance, but when you get up close like this intro scene did, they really show their cracks. The hand-drawn backgrounds also look pretty nice, so I'll give props to them for that one. The atmosphere and the soundtrack are also fantastic, and they kept me immersed in the game's world despite the presence of a ton of jank. The soundtrack, while solid, does have some pretty, interesting moments. For example, the detective's office.
You're working late.
So are you.
You should be in bed.
I was very puzzled as to why he was shitting his pants so often, but those sounds turned out to be very lo-fi jazz recording playing in the background. The entire core gameplay loop consists of stock adventure game activities. You know, combining items, using items, exploring an open world, and interacting with all sorts of zany characters. The twist, if you can call it that, is you can switch between Joe and his wife Christine at will. Their stories are more or less independent from one another until they converge, but there are certain parts where you absolutely need to progress a certain amount in Joe's story to continue Christine's story, and vice versa. I honestly don't see why it gives the player this much freedom in switching between Joe and Christine, because it makes you kind of confused as to when each event happened. But it is nice to see them pull off the dual protagonist thing that a lot of adventure games do. Even though Joe's goal is to get out of the prison and Christine's is to get their papers, get away from Mickey, and get loot from the heist, the gameplay for each character is not different. Both of them have to solve puzzles and gather items. Luckily, this isn't the kind of adventure game that will screw you if you forget an item, as it stops you from going further if you forget something. But it is kind of annoying that you have to leave no stone unturned. The puzzles themselves are more or less intuitive though. For example, you have to get some winter melon soup for your landlady Vivian. You can't read the Chinese characters on the spice boxes, so you grab a menu which has the translations of each ingredient and use that to find the winter melon. It's nothing like the Mystery of the Druids, for example, which has a puzzle where you need to find 50 cents for a payphone, so you poison a homeless guy with pure ethanol mixed with apple cider in order to steal some of his change. There are a few sections where the game breaks the traditional adventure game molds, and you have to perform certain activities which require the use of a part of your brain that isn't meant for puzzle solving. By that, I mean there's one combat section.
I know what you want. You're not getting it. It's mine. Come on!
He's hitting me with a car jack?
You're fast, boy, but I'll hit you sooner or later.
Time to talk is over.
It's not very good.
You ruined my life. You can't beat me.
Okay, drag these guys to the hospital.
The voice acting is spotty. There's some half-decent voice acting, but on the whole, the delivery is very awkward, and it sounds like there's a lot of 50s beatnik slang shoehorned in there.
Thanks for picking up the checkaroo.
Yep, that one's going into my cringe compilation.
So you're good with books, aren't you? I'm good with the book. I dig it.
There are also a lot of lines where the characters talk over each other, but not in a natural way. Like they didn't properly separate the lines when mixing the audio. My final complaint with the voice acting is the way certain monologues have different lines which sounded like they were recorded on different days and in different rooms.
All I know is what I read in the papers.
Christine, he's guilty. Okay? He was convicted in a court of law. You're heading for serious trouble. Let me help. You've never had a stable home.
The characters in this story are about as cringe and awkward as the voice acting too. I have no idea what the motivations for a lot of these people are, because the voice acting is delivered with very little weight behind it, and their actions seem out of character because their characters aren't firmly established. Most of the characters follow this trend, but I think the two most egregious offenders are the priest and the convict Gaspipe. And yes, Gaspipe is his name. Now I'm going to get into some light spoilers here, but nothing major. The priest is kind of portrayed as this religious zealot who dislikes convicts and censors their mail, but it's later revealed that he's actually a fairly progressive guy. He married a gay couple in a secret ceremony in his church. Nothing really indicated that he was conflicted with his role as a priest in the 50s and his progressive beliefs. There's not inner turmoil that is on display or anything. It was merely used as a plot device to facilitate communication between Joe and Christine. I understand morally gray characters, but when you don't show the turmoil that these characters are going through, it just kind of falls flat. The other biggest anomaly is Gaspipe. In the mess hall at the beginning of the game, he was a complete dick to Joe for seemingly no reason. Nothing was really said about their history together, just that he's a dick. Then Gaspipe goes ahead and offers to make a distraction so Joe can tell his wife Christine about his breakout attempt. Not only that, Gaspipe seems more than eager to follow through with his offer, and he ends up screaming at his wife to get the prison guard to escort him out of the visitors area. It seems that all's well that ends well, until Gaspipe confronts Joe about this in the yard and tells him that his wife is divorcing him after he made that scene. This makes absolutely zero sense for two reasons. One, why does the guy who hates Joe so much offer to do him a favor like this? And two, why did he opt to scream at his wife when any other distraction would have sufficed? I know stupidity isn't necessarily a plot hole, but these pieces just don't fit together for his character. Finally, the game has branching paths that are scattered throughout the story. There are several different routes you can take to resolve these specific subplots, but the main story is fairly linear with few options that lead to substantial change to the overarching story. In fact, though the game loves to tout its multiple endings, there are actually only really 2 endings that don't involve the main characters dying or getting caught. And how do you get to each ending? You select one of 2 dialogue options and the respective ending for each one plays. Even then, only one ending really makes sense considering the things both protagonists did to get to that point, but I won't spoil what happens in either one. It just feels like lazy design, since they shoehorned in such a rushed ending. It feels like they wanted to add the illusion of player choice, but the choices you made during the course of the game didn't even matter. Alright, that's pretty much all I had to say about 1954 Alcatraz. While this game has its fair share of faults, it's also fun, relatively intuitive, user-friendly, and a really enjoyable and sometimes unintentionally hilarious experience. I'd recommend picking it up. I can certainly think of far worse ways to spend 6 hours. Thank you all for watching all the way through if you did, and accompanying me on the first step of this journey through my backlogs. I'll be back next time. Be sure to check the list to see what's coming up next. Thank you, and good night.